Shalom and welcome back. Today we're going to be focusing on understanding how to properly use the et and how to understand the actual pronoun, the objective pronouns that are attached to verbs. So, objective pronouns. Alright. Objective pronouns in a real form and a correct form is always going to be disattached, or unattached I should say. Disattached doesn't exist. Don't mock me on this, okay? I speak English fine, alright? I'm just messing with you. Alright, anyways, so objective pronouns always have to be unattached to the actual verb, okay? So if we take a verb, for example, like shamarti. Shamarti, I guarded, okay? I guarded what? If you're going to say I guarded it, then we're going to say here, oto. Shamarti oto, I guarded it, okay? In the Tanakh, it is very common that we find that there's many grammatical things that happen at times, okay? One of these things is we see objective pronouns, such as like shamarti, oto, is changed. And this is what we find that takes place. We find that we start to see shamarti to become shamartiv, okay? And this is what we see happens. We have to understand this from a grammatical standpoint. This is considered defective. It is incorrect, not correct grammar, that this is actually supposed to be this. Okay? So instead of shamarti oto, which is the correct form, we might see something like shamartiv. Okay? This is supposed to be this. So if you ever come across these objective pronouns, which are written in connection to the verb, which I'm going to give you many, many examples of this in this case here, we have to understand that these are all incorrect, grammatically incorrect forms. A lot of times what happens is with people when they're reading in Hebrew, they get very confused because when they start learning verbs and they start learning the pronouns that are attached to them, they kind of get familiarized. Well, when they read the Tanakh, all of a sudden everything falls apart. They begin to say, I don't even know how to translate this word anymore. And that's because this is the problem. They've come across a verb that has an objective pronoun attached to it, and so it's almost like they think it's some foreign language now because all the patterns of what they were used to using when they were trying to dissect and use the verb chart, for example, like we have over here. Let me pan over here for a second here. If you were to look over here, for example, at the verb chart, and let's zoom in on this verb chart over here so you can get an example of this, alright? Okay, that should be good enough, okay? So here we have the future tense verbs. We have the aleph in the front, the tav, the yud. Okay, we know that this is future because all the pronouns are placed in the front. Okay, then we got our verb that's in the middle, and then when we have either the feminine or we have the plural forms, we always find that there's also the ending letters that are placed at the end, which indicates that this is a plural. Okay, whereas in the past tense, we see that here's our verb. We see the verb has the pronoun attached to the end. And we see that this is the normal form of the verb, okay? So we know that if I look at this chart, and if I look at this chart, or if we use any of the charts that's actually used in the grammar thing that I posted specifically on the website, any of the grammar charts, doesn't matter what they are. Let's zoom back over here. Let's focus. Woo, let's go backwards. All right. So let's get back over here. All right. So if we go back to the charts that are actually on the website, yadramah.wordpress.com, you'll find all the verb charts are going to be showing you the normal form of how that verb is to function, which means you're never going to find any objective pronouns attached to any of these things because it's not grammatically correct. So we have to understand that whenever we see this, we're having a grammatical problem here. Something is going on grammatically in this sentence which screams out, hey, something needs to be focused on. We need to focus on the fact that this is grammatically incorrect so we can understand and distinguish between the correct form and the incorrect form. And this is why it's kind of hard with a lot of things that we see at times reading scripture or reading the Tanakh or any of the words that we find, whether it's the Tehillim or the prophets. We find that we see these grammatically incorrect forms. These are not at all to be understood as you can write it this way, you can write it this way, okay? There's a correct way of writing it and there's an incorrect way of writing it. And so we have to understand that the incorrect way has been written this way. Shamarti, instead of shamarti oto, it's written shamartiv, okay? Shamarti oto should be the correct way of writing it. So we're just going to focus on just knowing the fact that it's grammatically incorrect if we see the objective pronoun attached to it. So let's look at all these different possible things that we find and what kind of things, what kind of little hiccups are we going to see through the process of our actual going through this, okay? So we went through this one, we did shamarti oto. I'm going to go and show you the incorrect forms and we're just going to learn to identify them so we can sit there and say, which one of these does this group belong to that the objective pronoun is the one that we're using, okay? So here in this one, we're going to be utilizing these words, okay? So here we see pekaratim, okay? We know this is our root. So we know that's the verb, all right? T, we know that if you put a T at the end, we know that's I in the past tense. So what do we have left? We have this, the mem. The mem, which we see, if we go through all of these, we're going to say, ah, that's they, okay? So this should have been written actually like this. Otam. Pakarati otam. That's correct. That's exactly how we should have written it if it was to be written correctly and according to grammar. So we want to understand this. So we want to know how to do this properly so that we can know just grammatically how to identify when something's correct and how to identify when something's incorrect. Okay? Let's look at another one here. Okay? Okay. Now we have another one. Hifkaraticha. Okay? What is this? Well, we know that if we look at this here, we know that this should be a he feel form. So we know this is in the he feel form. Okay? So if I was to take this part, I should basically put a little dotted line, right, through here to separate the true verb from this foreign object pronoun that's attached to it. Because this, we should have been written otecha. Okay? So that's going to show you that when we look at all of these different pronouns which were attached to the verb, we see the verb here, hifkarati, cha. Hifkarati should be written hifkarati otecha. Okay? Let's look at another one here. All right. Here we have the verb vativm. Vativm. What is this? If we take our dotted line once again and break up the word, it should be vativ. Vativ, which means and you shall bring, because this is the vav conversive, and you brought. So now we have the mem, we have to look over here and say, ah, that's them. So this should have been here, otam. Vativ otam, and you shall bring them, or and you brought them, okay? And we have to continually keep doing this over and over again, because as you become more familiarized with the actual objective pronouns, which are attached to verbs, you'll begin to feel more comfortable knowing the fact that this isn't as hard as you thought, okay? Let me find something that here that you might find more difficult. Well, let's see here. All right. Yivrachenu, Yivrachenu. Now, if you had thought, wait a second, Yivrache, that isn't that Yivrachu? But you're like, wait a second, I'm confused here. Okay? We just have to once again go through here, look at the real form that would make sense the most, Yivrech, which means and he will bless, and then we have to add otanu, okay? Yivrech otanu, alright? So we know that this nu here belongs to the us form. It's the objective pronoun that should have been written otanu, okay? And this is just so important that we do this so that when we're learning how to translate our Bibles in Biblical Hebrew, that we're utilizing everything we need in order to properly grasp all of the things that we're learning so that we can grow properly and not be confused. Alright, so here's another one. Ti varacha ni, okay? Here, if we were to take this, we would say, we know this is future, right? We know that this is the root that should be here. Draw our line once again here. Now we have ni. Ni means I. So this should have been what? Oti. Tivarech oti. That's what it should have been. Okay? So we know that looking at this, it should have been Tivarech oti, but here, it's written Tivarecheni. Alright? So this is very valuable information to keep holding on to, so that you can literally take the things you see and grammatically put everything right back to where it was supposed to be. And here's another one. Okay? Let's look at this word here, okay? Ve'alehu, okay? If you know anything about what we've been going through and studying, if you've gone over the different parts that are the lessons that we've been going through, you'll say, wait a second here, this hey doesn't make sense. Because in Hebrew, every single hey verb, when it's used in a vav conversive, the hey disappears. So it should have just been v'yal, and he ascended. So what is who? Who goes back to, that's right. So here it would be the him, and I'll write here the it, because we also have to remember objects are also its and stuff, okay? So here it should have been oto, v'yal oto, and he ascended it, okay? So here we can see in this very passage of what we're looking at, passage, but here we can see this very grammar that we see that objective pronouns, yes, they can be absolutely attached and used time and time again, what you see with verbs, but you have to understand that when you see them attached, you have to unattach it. And you also got to know your main grammatical rules that say that, like this one, if you didn't know that the hey could not be a part of this noun, or this verb here, excuse me, if you didn't know the hey could not be a part of this verb, then you might get confused and think, well, maybe it's just the vav here. You have to remember your grammatical rules to know the distinction as to when something can be this way and when something cannot. Okay? Here, let's do this one. Make sure I got it here. There we go. All right. Oh. Asita ha. Okay? Asita ha. All right? Or asita, I should actually say, not asita ha. Asita. Right? Asita. All right? What is asita? Well, here, this part, you should say, well, that makes sense. Asita means you did. Right? You know that. It should make actual sense here. Right? So, what is this? We have to say here, this obviously has to be ota. Ota means it, the feminine form. This is what we find here, okay? One thing I want you to understand is so important is, don't get caught up in little dots and little dashes, okay? That's one of the things many people get too focused on, is they get so caught up in the dots and the dashes, which is the nikud. Don't get caught up in it, okay? The reason I didn't put all these dots and dashes and nikuds and all these things is because it's not essential. You just want to look for the letter. If you see a hey, whether it's got a dot in it or whether you recognize the dot in it at the moment, it doesn't really matter. What matters is if you see the hey attached to a verb, you should say, oh, that's what that is, okay? Just like nu. Or just like here, you could have it as who, or it could be o, or it could be just the vav, or u. It doesn't really matter. If you just know that the vav or who is used, then you know you have this pronoun, objective pronoun attached to it. The same thing with this. The only distinction is going to be that's the feminine form, that's the masculine form. So if you're going to distinguish between masculine and feminine, that's going to be your key points. This one doesn't really matter. It just, you have to focus on the fact that you got this attached to a verb. This one here, this here, this here, doesn't matter how the vowel is, it or am, that doesn't matter, because the point you have to memorize and know for certain is the fact that you're always fighting with the problem that you're dealing with in a verb that has something attached to it. It's not a normal looking verb to you. So you're going to be sitting here and basically saying, you know what, this thing doesn't look normal. So when you look at it, it looks like it should say asita. Okay, I get that part. But why is the hey here? Then you have to sit there and say, well, look, this is what's going on. The adjective pronouns being attached. Because adjective pronouns being attached, you have to sit there and say, this is what was lacking. I needed to have this. And I want to make sure I got that full on screen here, because maybe I didn't have it in screen, but you want to make sure that this here, this is how you want to have it written, okay? So that's so vitally important. The rest of the stuff you're going to see, it's just going to repeat the same stuff I'm doing. So whether I put a hey, a nu, a chem, a hu, a cha, a ni, a chen, a am, a nun, it all is going to be the same thing, okay? So your homework assignment really should be like, go open up a Tanakh, go open up a Torah, and start looking for all of the verbs that you know that you can identify quickly, and see if you see an objective pronoun attached to it. If you do, tell yourself, this is grammatically incorrect, right? This is going to help you with just understanding the grammatical forms of how something's to be written versus what you're actually looking at. So you can say, okay, I know it should be written like this, but this is how it's written, and that's so that you can be very clear that knowing that this is the correct way that you write something. You say what? Asita ota. Alright? Asita ota. I did it. I hope you enjoy this lesson. We'll see you next time as we learn more Biblical Hebrew on this channel.